there, this is Katie. Welcome to my great sourdough experiment. I am stuck inside because of coronavirus, and I had been thinking about making some bread, but apparently everyone thinks that it is the end of the world. I went to the store and they were sold out of yeast. So I thought that I would come back home and make some of my own. Because we're an experimenting family, I thought that I would try a little experiment to see how to make the best type of sourdough starter. First of all, I'm going to give big credit to Deborah Wink of freshloaf.com. She is an actual scientist who did actual scientific research on the microbiology of sourdough starters, and she figured out a lot about the science of the bacilli, the bacteria in sourdoughs. So I'm going to be leaning heavily on the research that she did in order to do my experiments. Now, what she found was that the pH of the liquid that you put into the sourdough starter at the very beginning matters a lot. If this pH is too high, you get a type of bacteria that grows that is not beneficial. So you want to keep the liquid pH low in order to get the lactobacillus and the yeast to grow, and that's what gets the tangy, yeasty sourdough flavor that you want. Now, her recommendation is to use pineapple juice, which has a pH of around 3.5. Unfortunately, I don't have any pineapple juice in the house. So instead, I took some lime juice out of my fridge and added some water to it, and I tested it with some pH papers that I had around. I previously made some hard apple cider, and I found that adding 2 cups water, 500 milliliters of water, with 2.5 teaspoons of lime juice gets a solution that's about 3.5 pH. So I'm going to use that for a substitute for pineapple juice. So in this scientific experiment, I'm going to be using 3 different types of flours and 2 different types of liquids. The first flour that I'm using is just a whole wheat bread flour from King Arthur Flour. The second one is a home ground whole wheat rye flour. And the third one is a whole wheat Teff flour, which is kind of a specialty type of flour. Sample number 1 is going to be rye flour plus the lime solution. Sample number 2 is going to be whole wheat flour plus the lime solution. Sample 3 is going to be Teff solution plus plain bottled water. And sample 4 is going to be whole wheat flour with plain bottled water. And I'm actually going to be using the recipe from the King Arthur Flour website just to see how that works out versus the formulation that is used on freshloaf.com. So I'm going to get to it right now. For the freshloaf.com recipe, I'm going to be adding 2 tablespoons of flour and 2 tablespoons of liquid per day to each of the samples. In the King Arthur Flour version of the sourdough starter recipe, you do on day 2 discard half of the starter, which I think is very wasteful, and that's why I'm hoping that these other 3 recipes will turn out to be just as good, if not better, than the King Arthur Flour recipe. Okay, so Teff flour is going to be getting water instead of the lime solution, just because I'm curious to see whether there's a difference in the bacteria in the Teff flour versus the rye flour. We'll see. Interestingly, there's a lot less water in the King Arthur flour recipe than in the freshloaf.com recipe. I probably will not end up needing 2 cups of this lime solution, but I can put sugar in it when I'm done and have limeade. Mixed up very well with the water, scrape down the sides. It's just a tiny little amount. And finish off with the cream wrap. All of these have been sterilized. I will make a video about sterilization in the future. I have my own tips and tricks for making it easier. Okay, and finally to the King Arthur. Now I've used a water and flour starter before, and in my experience what happens is if you're not using an acidic liquid, you get the bacteria that is not beneficial, and it inhibits the growth of the good bacteria that you want that makes the tangy, tasty sourdough. That's what I'm expecting to happen with this one. We shall see. I'm going to take a hand washing break. Okay, King Arthur flour is way too, not enough moisture in here. I'm gonna lay this out on the surface and try to incorporate all this and see how much flour is still in there. Okay. Now the King Arthur is nicely hydrated, it's all doughy. Hand washing time! Alright, that is it. We have 4 different sourdough samples. I am going to put these into a hopefully sort of warm space. 80 degrees is ideal. 70 degrees is probably the minimum that I would want to do, and I will revisit these tomorrow to feed them. Thanks a lot for joining. I'll see you then.